Hello, sword people. Welcome to the Sword Guy podcast. This is your host, Dr. Guy Windsor, consulting swordsman, teacher, and writer. Join me for interviews with historical martial arts instructors and experts from a wide range of related disciplines as we discuss swords, history, training, and bringing the joy of historical martial arts into our modern lives. I hope you enjoy this greatest hit episode of the show. You can find all the episodes at swordschool.com/podcast, and there's a direct link in the description to this episode's show notes. On with the show. I'm here today with Jamie MacIver, who is a historical martial arts instructor who co-founded the London Historical Fencing Club in 2016, which has grown to over 120 members and now has its own permanent training space. He is, like me, something of a Vadi fan, and his latest project is the Historical Research Company Ltd, which produces research on historical fencing safety. Currently, they are investigating the safety, or otherwise, of various fencing tips. So, without further ado, Jamie, welcome to the show.
Thanks, Guy. Thanks for having me.
Oh, it's nice to meet you. Whereabouts in the world are you?
So, London Historical Fencing Club is, funnily enough, in London. So,
Okay.
London, UK, not London, Ontario. It sometimes gets confused.
That's helpful.
Yep. And our club is central London. We're near Vauxhall, if you know what that means to anybody, which is pretty much heart of London, just not the posh bit in the heart of London. Me, I live East London, so I live the other side of London from it. So it's not the most convenient location for me, but for most people, it's great to get to.
Excellent. Are you actually in the club at the moment, or are you at home?
No, I'm at home. Yeah,
Okay.
at present, I'm at home. Yeah, I will be at the club later today, but not right now.
Excellent. The mentioning that the London Historical Fencing Club is actually in London is helpful because the Espoo Historical Fencing Society is not in Espoo anymore. It's in Helsinki.
Yeah.
So yes, people, I mean, sometimes the club moves but keeps its name, and that can be very confusing.
The Waterloo Sparring Group, which is not LHFC, but they now run out of our venue, was originally Waterloo, and then it was in Southwark for a while, which is not too far from Waterloo, and now it's Colway all the way to Vauxhall, and they've not changed the name from Waterloo Sparring Group. So
Well, there
definitely
we go.
does happen.
So if I rock up to Waterloo to spar people, I will be in the wrong
You will
place.
find no one to spar. I mean, no one. You probably should find no one to spar, but maybe there'll be someone there. There's a lot of people in London, so.
Fair enough. So, Jamie, how did you get into historical martial arts?
That is the fault of my wife. Entirely the fault of my wife. She's not a historical martial artist at all. But I'd been talking about kind of doing something for a while. I kind of knew vaguely what HEMA was, but I never really got off my ass, to put it kindly, and got around to doing it. So she, one birthday, very nearly exactly 10 years ago, bought me a sword and bought me 4 weeks of classes at the London Sword and Dagger Club, which was in Waterloo, actually. Doesn't exist anymore. And I kind of just hit it off from there. And I don't think either of us realized quite how good a birthday present that was at the time.
That is an epic birthday present.
Yeah, she's not going to top it. She's not going to top it, ever.
No.
For sure.
Okay, so what kind of sword was it?
It's unfortunately the other side of this bookshelf.
And the listeners can't see it anyway. So
can't see it anyway. So yeah, I mean it's a historical museum reproduction kind of quality longsword though. Yeah,
Lovely.
It's Edward I should know this. Edward the second or third reproduction sword, something like that. So
very cool. So you were training with did you say the London Sword and Dagger?
London Sword and Dagger Club, yeah, at the time.
Not familiar with them.
Well, they don't exist anymore, and they haven't for about 8.5 years. So
you showed up and they folded, okay?
Not quite. Yeah. So essentially, it didn't end on the best of terms, but essentially the instructor more or less disappeared, which is what led to London Historical Fencing Club being created. Essentially, it was a bunch of us who had gone to that. We all used to go to LSDC, train regularly, and then when it just kind of pretty suddenly just sort of collapsed, we were like, well, that sucks. We kind of like hitting each other. Let's keep doing it. And we formed the London Historical Fencing Club, which is now 8 years ago? 8 years ago, yeah.
2016, it says in my notes.
2016, yes.
Yeah, excellent. And you now have a permanent space. So we'll get onto that in a minute.
Yeah, sure.
But okay, we do have to discuss Vadi.
We do,
because
definitely.
I have been reliably informed by you, in fact, that you are something of a fan of Philippa Vadi. So how did you discover Vadi?
Well, this hopefully won't get too awkward.
No, that's okay. You can say whatever you like.
So I discovered I was still at LSC was still running, right? I wasn't teaching anything. It wasn't Elective C yet. I was about just over a year in, so it would have been March time. So yeah, coming up to a year and a half in, not quite.
Yeah.
Right. And Esfinges, which doesn't do a lot these days, for those of you who may not know who that is, they do a lot of stuff promoting women, particularly in HEMA. But they were doing this online event that they called 30 Days of HEMA. It was coming for everybody, and it wasn't like very particularly formal. Basically, the idea was you pick a text, HEMA text, obviously, and you read that for the 30 days, and you had certain challenges you needed to do, like post this on Facebook and do a video here and all that kind of stuff. I didn't do any of that part of it because I kind of got a bit too obsessed with the book itself. And I saw that and I thought, okay, I'll do that. Sounds fun. But LSDC was a Fiore club.
Okay.
So at that point, I only really studied Fiore. And I was like, well, I don't really want to do Fiore because like I'm learning that already. I want to do something else. And I'd heard from many people that people were like, oh, Vadi is like, he's just a bit of a step on from Fiore. He's very, very close to Fiore. So I picked up this translation. You may have heard of it, Veni Vadi Vici.
Oh, fuck, no. No. Jamie. Tell me that you have the updated one.
I have the updated one. I absolutely have
okay,
the updated
all right.
I
okay,
absolutely have the
all right.
I have,
Before you say another word, all right.
Yeah.
That book was a problem, and I put it out there because I was obliged to. It wasn't ready yet, but I couldn't find the right editors for it.
Yeah.
And so I put it out anyway because people had paid me for it.
Yeah.
And this is why I don't crowdfund my research stuff anymore.
I've learned that
and so that book, if anyone's listening, if you have Veni Vidi Vici, by all means keep it on your bookshelf because it looks quite nice. But for God's sake, don't open it. And the translation work, which has been massively updated and improved in Arsenal Fighting in Earnest, that is free. The new translation is free, so anyone can download it and use that instead. Are we clear?
For what it's worth, I would agree that the new translation is better than the old translation. So,
well, I should bloody hope so.
Yeah, I have both. I have literally every translation that's ever been made of Vadi somewhere in this house. Including many that have never been published. So
basically what you were about to say was you found my Veni Vidi Vici and you were so horrified by it, you decided to do it yourself.
More or less, right?
Yeah,
it wasn't
that's fine. That's fine.
Wasn't so much. The thing that was most horrified actually was the comparisons to Fiore. Right, that was actually what really
you didn't like. Okay, interesting.
In that, or more accurately, there are things in Vadi that you can see in Fiore, and that there are definitely links, and that is undeniable. But it was partly, some of this was in your commentary in the book, and some of this was just the general narrative. If you speak to anybody about Vadi at the time, they would say the same thing, which is, it's basically Fiore. Fiore's got more books. Go for Fiore instead. And I kept reading Vadi. I was like, this is not that similar to Fiore. There are all these things that are so unique to Vadi, and all these things that are quite different. And actually, I think there's something else here that is sort of stands alone and independent, and is almost better to look at on its own rather than make these comparisons to Fiore. So it was a Fiore club, but I did go to my instructor and say, actually, I'm kind of into Vadi. Is it okay if I just kind of do your exercises, but I'll be putting my own little Vadi flavor on them? And I really just started kind of going through that. And it was supposed to be a short-term project. And then the longer I did it, the more I felt that actually it stands well on its own as its own kind of unique system.
Of course it does.
And just kind of kept running with it. And I vastly prefer it to any of the kind of Fiore stuff I've done.
I would absolutely agree that Vadi is his own system. It's clearly influenced by Italian fencing of the period. It's not an outlier in any respect.
Yeah.
Right. But you were doing Fiore exercises with a Vadi twist in class, and presumably that wasn't massively disruptive. So there are sufficient similarities that you can sort of do that. But yeah, it's not Fiore. It is. I mean, the footwork's different for a start.
Footwork's different. And in many ways, I think what you said there, and you have an article you wrote a while back on comparing Vardy's guards to the Bolognese and the Fiore guards, and and that one, and I feel that the links to the Bolognese are actually kind of both more interesting and stronger in many ways than some links to Fiore.
It's closer in time. I mean, 1480s. Vardy's 1480s. No, Fiore is. writing in around 1400 to 1410. Okay.
Yeah.
Vadi, 1482 to 1487, somewhere in there.
You're right. It depends. Yeah, what you mean by Bolognese. Yeah.
And Bolognese, the beginnings of the Bolognese are already around in the 1480s.
You're right.
Talking Dardi and that lot.
Yeah,
it's just
Dardi,
the first publication,
later.
I think, is 1517.
Yeah, something like that.
Yeah.
I think it's about that. You're right. Yeah.
Yeah. So it's, I would say Vadi is contemporary with early Bolognese, much more so than he's contemporary with Fiore.
Yeah, yeah. And I was quite confused when I first heard about Dardi, actually, because no, you are 100% right on the timings there. Because like,
so I'm right about something. Oh, this is fantastic. I feel much better now, right? Jamie. Thank you.
And your new translation, up until relatively recently, was the one I tended to use. Filippo Dardi was confusing for me when I first encountered this. It was like, is it just a misspelling of the name? I was really hoping it would be, but clearly it isn't.
No,
definitely not. Like, they are 100% different people. But it did have a brief hour when I was like, this is kind of funny,
Okay, so specifically, most of the people listening will have sweated through a 2-hour-long conversation in which Dario Magnani, right? We have a 2-hour-long conversation about a single paragraph in Fiore's text in the Getty manuscript, right? So, if they can handle that, the listeners can handle some serious specifics about Vadi.
Cool.
So what do you think particularly is Vadi-esque? What makes him so different to Fiore, in your view?
So the first thing, the reason why Vadi clicks with me more than Fiore, before I get into the specifics of the system, is the presentation, right? Vadi's kind of general throwing out of principles. Yeah, he doesn't describe them necessarily as principles sometimes, but he's talking generalities much more than specifics than Fiore, which for me makes it much easier to actually apply it in any kind of fencing context, because you don't have to go through this kind of play structure and then work out how they link together.
Yeah, you don't have to extrapolate the principles from the plays. He just tells them to you straight out in the 16 chapters of
exactly that
his theory. Yeah.
Right, which makes it so much easier to then say, oh, you can apply the principles more easily if you've been told the principles in the first place. For me, the stuff in Vadi that I find most different to Fiore, most fascinating, the stuff I prefer is all the stuff that Vadi refers to as the Mezzaspada, the middle sword, where you have this kind of complex back and forth of sword play. You have these half actions, these cuts that come from strange angles with strange edges, and this kind of close blade work is what I really like in Vadi, that I think you don't see so much in Fiore, right? Or at least if it's there, it's kind of hidden away in the turns or whatever it is.
It's described in Vadi. I think it's implied in Fiore.
It's certainly nothing so straightforward to put it out of the book as you get in Vadi. Yeah. Really the elevation of tempo, which we first see in Vadi, we don't really have in Fiore, to kind of one of the core fencing concepts, then leads to a lot of the other aspects where, he's talking about exploitation of opportunities. He's talking about the tactical aspects, right? That about when to apply things, not just what to apply, and then kind of working it out. And for me, as the system as a whole, putting the presentation aside, Vadi's longsword over, I would say, any other longsword system that's practiced is the most defensive, the most kind of balancing, what would now be referred to as a kind of a parry riposte style, but coming in from a defensive aspect right back to a counter-attack again, and the flow from that back and forth.
Okay. Why would you say particularly that Vadi is more defensive than, for instance, Fiore?
The guards is the main reason for Vadi. So if you see the presentation of pretty much all the guards, he's brought the sword forward, and the structure of all of them has essentially closing lines of attack, whereas Fiore's guards are much more open, right? They're kind of open, positions to strike from.
Some of them are.
I would say all of them are. I would say all of them are.
Well, I wouldn't call Postalonga, Bicorno, or Breve, or even Fenestra particularly open.
Even longer.
And definitely not Frontale either.
Even longer, because it's got it in the center versus on the side for the Vadi guards. You're not closing a specific line of attack, right? Here, I've got to react to my opponent versus here with the archer and Vadi's coast guard, we're closing a line of attack, and again that gives me this setting up for a counter attack from parry riposte, rather than a reactive proposal to it. So this use of the guard.
Okay, hang on. If the guard is already closing a line, as some of them clearly are, right? I'm not disagreeing with that point at all.
Yeah.
How does that make you more likely to parry?
So it's setting up specific parries by closing lines, or rather, it's closing down certain attacks. So if I'm in a central guard and you see or an open guard of any kind, to be honest, my defensive options need to be wider, right? I haven't forced my opponent to strike in a certain location.
Sure.
And as a result, my defense is now on the back foot, right? I'm reacting to my opponent coming in. By using guards that close lines, instead of me waiting for my opponent to strike me and them having the advantage of them being proactive, I proactively closed off certain lines of attack, right? So by reducing their attacking options, I can use that to make intelligent choices about where I want to defend, right, or where I'm likely to be struck at. So this closing of one line, obviously you open up others, right? But I don't know if I'm closing my left hand opening, I'm not going to be attacked directly into the sword on that side unless I've messed it up. Whereas if I'm in a central guard or a completely wide open guard, I could be attacked on the left, I could be attacked on the right, or whatever it happens to be. So my defense becomes more complicated, right? As a result of that, my counterattack becomes more complicated.
Interesting. I mean, Vadi does have open, as you described them, guards like Porta di Ferro, Piana Terrena. It's basically to the Porta di Ferro, weapons held off to the side. Falcon is pretty much in the center, and it's not really closing any lines of attack. He has his Postulate di Gingara also. So it's not like he doesn't have these open guards, but he has more examples of guards which close a specific line.
Yeah.
That's fair.
The low guards, even those have been adapted slightly. Right? They are more open than the others, there's no denying it. But he's even bringing the sword further forward on those ones. That lends them more to be counter-thrusting guards than the sort of the slightly wider versions of it that you see in Fiore.
Okay, I don't think you can get that from the images. Okay, if you're comparing, for example, Porta di Ferro Piana Terrena with to the Porta di Ferro, I don't think there's any meaningful difference in the position of the sword. Likewise, I would say the same for his Dente di Gingara, which is closer to Mezzana Porta di Ferro and Fiore. I mean, if the point is significantly out of line, as it is in both cases, I don't see how that's any different.
Yeah, it's funny. I don't think it is significantly out of line in the Vadi versions, actually, for any of them. I did a thing a while back, a very long time ago now, where I thought I had one image from a tournament footage I had that looked just exactly like one of the guard plates from Vadi. I was like, that's just a weird coincidence. That's hilarious. I wonder how many more I could find. And yes, they're not pictures, right? They're not pictures, but actually some of these quite subtle differences in terms of where the guard position are, and bringing the sword forward, you do end up with pictures that look almost exactly like the guards. So I think they are better than I've certainly gave them credit for when I started. And there is also advice in the text sections to keep your sword always in front of you, right? Where you have these guards. The wider they go, the less you're keeping to that. So I think it matches. The image also matches the parts of the text where he's got this charge forward. Falcon, by the way, I've always said that Falcon is the exception to many of Vadi's guard rules, and I think that is true. Although I do hold it over the right, not in the center. You can see the quillin behind the head in the image, and it is over the right shoulder. I think still it gives you a more charged position. It does kind of close lines, but it is definitely less true of the other.
Yeah, I don't think it meaningfully closes a line. And okay, I would have to see you doing Porta di Ferro to see how you could possibly think you're closing a line there.
But no, so to be clear, the low guards, I agree, don't explicitly close lines, except for to the legs, but they're such a rare target.
But
and I don't think it really counts.
But that's true for Fiore's low guards too.
It is.
Not quite a longer, obviously, but the rest.
But bringing the sword more forward has different reasons where it encourages certain defensive actions, particularly counter thrusts, I would say. But you're right that I don't think that the low guards are closing the lines in the same way as the middle or the higher guards are.
Okay, so what is your feeling about the feet close together that you see in, for instance, Falcon and in Vadi's Fenestra?
Yeah, it's interesting. I think Fenestra, Sagittaria, Archer, is the most interesting version of this.
Well, because the weapon is low.
No, because he has images that look exactly like Sagittaria where they're not together in later parts of the book. So
Yes.
you got in the guard section, yes, his feet are very close together for Archer, and then you've got in the mixed weapons section, he's standing in something that looks like a retracted Archer, but with feet wide, and you've got, of course, the first play where he's basically in an Archer position with feet wide again, and obviously they're in different contexts. But for me, the feet together, feet far away, I think it is somewhat transient rather than essential to the guard, in that it's an option. As in, sometimes you have your feet together, sometimes you don't, depending on what you're doing. Especially if guards are endpoints of actions, which is a fundamental principle in Vadi, as in other senses.
Well, okay, now I agree, but I'm curious because I've never found any real evidence for Vadi thinking that the guards are the beginning, middle, and ends of blows. And I agree, and I would say the same of Fiore. The earliest explicit textual reference I have for that is Angelo Vigiani's Lo Schermo, published in 1575.
I mean, Vadi does have the guard-to-guard line. So if you wish to appear great in start, go from guard to guard with the slow and serene hand. So that is obviously one line, right?
A very good line.
It's a very wonderful line. Yeah, very quotable, very memorable. That's for sure.
Yeah.
He doesn't often say come to this guard or come to this guard as an endpoint explicitly. That's for sure. There is one of the sections, I forget which chapter, where he's talking about the different blows, and I think for Fedente in particular, he's talking about it.
Well, Fedente gets its own chapter.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Sorry.
That's right.
Let me look it up.
And with the magic of technology, we can trim out any embarrassing pauses. Although I tend to leave them in because, it's otherwise you can sort of give people the impression that you have the entire thing memorized,
everything,
and it's a bit untrue.
I haven't quite.
Yeah.
There you go. Yep. So it is the
chapter 6, 7 blows of the sword.
No, I've lost it. Chapter 6, right? So chapter 6 has a lot of these in it, right? So from the Fendente chapter, I'm going from a different translation, sorry.
Shock horror. Whose translation are you using?
Mine.
Okay, fair enough.
So he's got, the downward cuts,
We are the
feet of the low
Fendente.
guards. Yeah, we are the Fendente. He's then got downward cuts are well suited to wound. From one pass or another, we return to guard. And note that we're not slow to strike. At least that's in the translation version that I've got, which is the fourth paragraph, fourth stanza. He's also talking about ending. He goes straight from downward cuts.
Oh
to
yeah, okay. So
low guard.
Fendente. So fourth paragraph.
Fourth
Fendente
paragraph.
for striking. We are well endowed. Returning to guard from pass to pass. Note we are not slow to strike.
Yeah.
That's
right.
my translation. Okay.
So there are plenty of times where he's talking about moving from guard to guard. He does never. You're right that he never says, "Oh, I started in Archer and I ended in Boar's Tooth" or anything like that, right? The start positions are pretty clear, but there's also he doesn't describe it coming to a guard, but it does end up coming to one anyway in the Defense Against the Rising Strike chapter.
Yes.
So this is the start in Archer. Your opponent's in Iron Door.
That's a weird section. Like, why the hell are we there? Like,
It doesn't match to anything else in the chapter either. It's a bit annoying.
Yes. I assume you've seen my interpretation of it.
I have, yes.
I have. Can you improve on it?
My main improvement on, I think the first part is pretty clear, right? It's kind of coming down on top of the sword, and then kind of straightening up. I think the main way of improving the interpretation is forgetting about whatever the hell play 13 is supposed to be, because I don't think it's
frisky.
No, I don't think there's not been any. No one has ever convinced me of any plausible thing that adds up to 13 that naturally flows from the position you end up.
Well, quite. So the question is, how the hell? I mean, he clearly, when he says, when your sword is joined at the crossing, then do the 13th stretta play, as you can plainly see pictured in our book on page 7. And it's like, but there ain't no page numbers. And page 7 starting from what? And I mean, you can think that maybe the 13th play is the 13th play of the longsword. That's not an unreasonable supposition. I mean, what else could it be?
Yeah, there is there's an article by a guy who works for the Louvre, where he cares about the Vadi medallion rather than the Vadi book. So for those who don't know, Vadi got a medallion cast about 30 years before the book. Yep. It's got the same kind of image of fencing on it, so we're pretty sure it's Vadi's. But he talks a bit about who Vadi is, and I don't know whether this is true or not, but his claim is that the two books were separate. And later combined. That the
two books were separate.
The written part that ends with Delos, the end. And the image part. His theory is that the paper changes. I've never seen the manuscript. I've got no idea. And the writing changes, and that they were separate and combined later.
That's an interesting idea. I think that's very unlikely.
I have no idea, and I've had no opportunity to examine the manuscript, so I've never been able to find out whether this is just harebrained or not. And this guy's not a fencing person, as I say, he's a numismatologist.
Well, I mean, presumably he has the collation, right?
Yeah. But the cut is immediately after the telos line of...
sure. But is it at the end of a choir? Because that is 14 feet.
So it starts at the I don't remember if it's the cut of the swords or the seigneur, but basically immediately after the word telos, that's the end of the choir.
Okay, so it's plausible that it has actually been stitched together. Whereas obviously if it came in the middle of the choir, that'd be extremely unlikely.
Yeah.
Okay.
But no, I double checked. I checked your second book that describes it, or was it wherever you would describe it? I don't remember where.
Yeah, it's in the introduction to the Art of Sword Fighting in Earnest, because I actually have the Sotheby's the sale, when they were selling these manuscripts, I have the Sotheby's sale catalogue.
The actual one.
I have the actual one. I'll grab it.
Yeah, cool. Nice.
It's amazing what you can get on eBay.
I hunted down the PDF. That was hard enough. So finding the actual version of it is impressive.
Yeah. Well, if ever you need to refer to it, just let me know. So I've got because there was the Getty manuscript was sold on, I think, the 1966, and a year later they have
the
Vadi one 1966. So I've got the Getty one and I've got the Vadi one. I've got both of them. Yeah, I found out. Yeah, this is the Vadi one here. So that is 28th of November 1967.
Right. A few years before I was interested in it, sadly.
So I just found these on eBay. I found the date of the sale, and then I just
hunted them down
and bought them both. And I think I've scanned them in and I've put them online. So
that might be where I got the PDF.
The PDF probably came from me.
Could be, yeah.
I didn't scan the whole thing because who cares about a bunch of religious texts or whatever.
Exactly.
Acta Synodi Sexti Constantinopolitani. No, not interested.
Yeah.
But and what's fascinating is it actually has some pretty good pictures from. I mean, there's.
Yeah, it's not bad at all. Yeah.
Yeah, that's the. Yeah, I mean, my first exposure to Vadi was this really, really shitty partial photocopy back in about 1998.
Right.
Yeah, and I was like, I can't do anything with this.
Yeah, exactly.
and then the scans became available, and thank God for that. We can actually do some work.
We're definitely luckier than we used to be. 100%.
All right. So, is there anything else regarding Vadi that you think we should discuss?
Well, I mean, the only thing I'll add is that, of course, I've been working from my translation for this conversation, so I do have a new translation coming out.
In what way coming out?
I'm going to be putting it open for a PDF as a open pay-as-you-like link at first, and then I'll be getting a print version of it out on Lulu hopefully soon after that. The PDF version will just be the translation really with some notes, not a lot of extra material, but the Lulu version I hope to put in some kind of at least more descriptive content of the
and justifications for why your translation is different to mine.
Exactly that. Yeah, exactly. Yep.
It's funny actually. one of the things I'm glad we sort of brought this up because I occasionally get emailed by people asking me why my translation of Fiore or Vadi or whoever else is different to some other person's.
Yeah.
And it's like, sometimes it's because the other person clearly can't read Italian. I mean, there are some egregious translations out there.
Yep.
But often it's just because they are expressing the same basic idea, but in a different way because their use of English is different.
Yep. Yeah, 100%. Yeah.
Or they, every translation has an element of interpretation in it. And if there are two possible translations of a particular word and one supports your interpretation and the other one doesn't, you're likely to go with the one that does.
Agreed. Completely agreed. And I mostly use your second translation.
Yeah.
But I've got pretty much every written translation there is of Vadi in this house right now. Right. So there's Greg Mellon and Luca Porzio's one. There's
Okay, something you should know about Greg and Luca's.
Yeah.
Okay. The night before, I think it was July 4th, so major party time in America, Greg stayed up all night getting the final corrections done to that document before it was being sent to the printers the next day. Right? And he got it in under the wire just in time. And the fucker sent the wrong text to the printers. So what we actually have in that published book
version
is not actually I mean, that is way worse than my Veni Vadi Vici fuck up.
Yeah.
Right? Because he had no control over it. So
I'm gonna double check my translation again before I publish it. I think back to these two conversations that we've just had.
Yeah. But okay, if you're publishing it yourself, you have complete control over
when to do it.
And also, if it goes out and then you decide you're not happy with it. I mean, I have a few corrections I want to make for The Art of Sword Fighting in Earnest, and I'm going to be doing not a second edition, just a slightly updated first edition. I mean, it's not much stuff. It's mostly being more consistent about Zogo Stretto, Zogo Largo translations and things like that. And I'm going to be producing I've got a facsimile out, which is just
I've got that too. Yeah,
of course you do.
Yeah,
right. But I'm going to be producing another version of the facsimile, which has the original facsimile in it, unchanged, but a second copy of the facsimile with my English over the top, right? So that people. I wouldn't want to sell a book like that didn't have the original with it, because I don't want anyone to get the idea of this is actually what the book looks like, right? It's got to be absolutely clear that no, this has been fucked about with and English put in where the Italian should be. Yeah. But it's we're doing the same for my translation of the Getty manuscript. That should be coming out in a couple of weeks. But Vadi is next. I'm going to get a few corrections in there. So if you have any notes for me, this is a perfect time to send them over, and I will take them seriously.
Yeah. Well, I've got one.
Okay. No promises, but I will take them seriously.
I'll look at it. But I've also got one other thing that I can offer you that I was planning on getting out after I got the publication out. Mm-hmm. For one of the things I've done as part of this is to get the high quality images from the library that has them.
Yep.
And get the backgrounds removed so they can look better on a printed page. And again, I've had permission from the library to release them again on a pay-as-you-like basis. So
handy.
I want to get them out there so other people can use them too, not just me. They've still got the same copyright, so you still have to go back to the library to get permissions for any kind of commercial publication. But the background images have already been removed. It cost me a few quid to pay someone to do that, hence the pay-as-you-like model for it. But I want to get them out there so other people can use them too, basically. Because
are they? Is that out now?
I haven't yet done it. It should be out soon.
Okay. When you say pay-as-you-like, where are you hosting that?
I will host it through my website, and I can do it. I've got a historical fencing research website that will also have a link there for it.
Dude, this is like a podcast. You have to say the URL.
True. So historicalfencingresearch.com, very easily.
Historicalfencingresearch.com. Did I get that exactly right, Jamie? So people could go to historicalfencingresearch.com
historicalfencingresearch.com will have a link to the pay-as-you-like version. It should be out probably, but well, certainly they'll be there before the end of the year. I suspect they'll be out sometime in November this year.
Okay, excellent. That would be great, and we can maybe scalp those and handy for like sticking the translation on.
Exactly. Yeah. The intent is to get a printed version, because I tried to print out some of these just with a regular printer. And
I know shit.
You can't see anything because of completely extraneous detail. So
the reason I did this facsimile is because I wanted a printed version.
Yeah.
And getting it done at home is expensive, and getting it done at a local print shop is expensive and not particularly much better than getting it done at home.
Yep.
But getting it done on the best quality paper at print on demand or whatever, I can actually sell it to people for cheaper than it would be to print it at home.
Yep.
And it's better quality. So it was like, it just struck me as a really fucking good idea. So I'm glad you got a copy.
Yeah.
But yeah, I would like better scans though. They're okay.
There are new scans that are really good. I don't know if you've seen them. They are so much better than the ones that I've seen before. The library published. So that's the ones I've used for the background removal.
Okay. So where would you find those?
Where did I find
them? On Wiktenauer yet?
I think there is a link from Wiktenauer. I think they're not the main images for Wiktenauer, but I think Wiktenauer has a link to it. If not, it's you can definitely get them through the Biblioteca Nazionale di Roma, is it? I think the one that has the Vadi scans through their. If you go through their manuscript portal, I'm pretty sure there's a link to it from that as well.
Oh, okay, handy. Yeah, I'll have a look, because better quality scans would be helpful.
Yeah, they are significantly better than the ones I saw before that.
Excellent, jolly good. Alrighty, so are we done with Vadi?
We can move on from Vadi. Yes.
Well, I also want to make sure.
For now,
All right. So, London Historical Fencing Club has graduated to having its own space. So, what made you take the plunge? Because that is a big commitment.
It was a big commitment. We outgrew our old space a long time ago, years ago. We were almost outgrowing it, at least for longsword, before the pandemic. And then what we had were two halls that were very close together. They weren't very big halls, community centres, in Kennington, which is still kind of central-ish London, not that far from Vauxhall, actually. You couldn't really have more than about 14 people in each hall for a class, so it wasn't big. And they were close together, but not that close together. So we had two classes a night, and they were spread over the two different halls.
Okay.
They also weren't especially cheap. I mean, they weren't too expensive, but they weren't especially cheap. And most of our classes post-pandemic really exploded, and we were selling out routinely on the rapier class, on most of the longsword classes, on saber. We also do a small sword and a Fiore class that were a bit smaller than the other two, but they were all also well attended. Yeah. And as well as that, we were really restricted. Like, space in London is really hard to find. Like, everything big is booked out, and particularly when you worry about space over multiple nights with rental for keeping all your kit there, right? It's basically a complicated problem. Yeah. So when we wanted to add another night, when we added the Fiore night, it's a great example actually. We wanted to do it on a Tuesday, but none of our halls had availability on a Tuesday, so we did it Thursday because we had some kit there. We also wanted to do it where the longsword class was, because they use a lot of similar equipment, but we couldn't because it wasn't available, so we had to buy a whole new set of longswords to put in the second hall. So all these kind of challenges, and then we would do things like, we want to do a weekend class, or we want to do a tournament, and finding a place for that was 90% of the work of running that. Yeah. So both for giving our regular classes some room to grow and to get the flexibility for these other things, as well as kind of better options for storage. Like, all of our kit was bundled into a cupboard or a bag after class. It didn't made for the freshest of kit, as you can imagine. Yeah. We had a long-standing plan to try and get a permanent venue that was initially, we thought we were going to try and get, because we're a charity, so we initially planned to get some funding for it, for lottery funding, which they said, we applied for it, and they said, great idea, but we're not funding that right now, so sorry. And we thought, okay, well, that screws our plans. But we were lucky, sort of, that the London business rental market has tanked quite a bit. So the price of venues was significantly lower than when we first looked. And we were like, actually, we could just about take the plunge with a bit of a risk, accepting that we're not quite breaking even yet, but if we add some more nights, if we run some of these one-off classes, actually we're not that far away.
And it's your own space, so you can add as many nights as you want.
And it really changes the equation, right? So, you know,
100%.
We worried about this before. It was like, okay, if we do this, will we get enough people to break even, or are we going to be losing money on this night? And sometimes we did, and it was fine, like, because we ran something that people enjoyed. But now it's like anything we run if 5 people and a dog show up, whatever, it's still money, right? You know.
Yeah. So hang on. So are you charging by the class?
We do charge by the class. Yeah.
Oh, that, if you don't mind my saying, that's a terrible idea.
Why?
Right, because it makes you have a major monthly outgoing, right, which is non-negotiable and it's fixed. Okay. So if you have all of your members paying a monthly fee that is automated, then your cash flow stabilizes enormously. And this is good for several reasons. Firstly, you will know based on the number of members you have whether you can afford the rent or not, right? It's not how active they are, it's how many members you have. And secondly, it means you can afford to also run classes which aren't as popular, but are probably good for people. Like, just as one possible example, you might have a women's only class, for instance, right? And maybe if you didn't have enough women to really properly fill it and justify it financially, you don't have to care. As long as you can, because you have the space and everyone is paying a monthly fee, it's just, you have all this flexibility for doing the thing that you know is the right thing to do, and you don't have to worry about, do we have 3 people in here tonight or do we have 20 people in here tonight?
To be fair, it's not generally an issue for us. We have considered it. We have discussed it. We've discussed a few different models. We've stuck with kind of paid by the class, but kind of deliberately. A lot of our members can't attend every week. A lot of our members are not able to come to everything. And most of our classes are pretty close to selling out even after the move. I'm pretty sure tonight is sold out or within 1 or 2 from it. And it means that those people who are doing it transiently can do it a bit more transiently, and those who do it more regularly, we've got some ways of them getting discounts so they're coming to multiple classes a week. And at least the admin overhead is nothing because it's all just through our website. We don't have to really just ticks along. There's nothing extra for that.
Okay. Risky. Complicated. Okay. Well, your club, you do what you want. So how big is the space?
So it is size-wise, I forget. Hang on. It's essentially it's a long railway arch, right? So it's about 9 meters wide, about 25 meters long.
Okay, so that's about 240 square meters.
Yeah,
that's about the size of my cell in Helsinki.
Right. I think I might be. No, it's a bit smaller than that. Sorry, a bit smaller than that. But because we've also got some changing room space, which we never had before.
Oh, sure.
And like kit storage and that kind of stuff. So we can comfortably we can fit about 28 fences in there.
That's plenty.
So it's quite sizable.
And you wouldn't really want a class any bigger than that if you're running good classes.
Exactly. I did run one. We did one of the things we've been able to run from this. I did a beginner's crash course. We did a half-day longsword course to try and. I normally have a beginner's intake for longsword, but it impacts regular training a lot more than this half-day crash course did because this is independent, and then we get a few beginners, but not everybody. And for that, I had 24. And that's a lot, right? In a single class, anyway. We do have 2 classes running at once, so that means that it does restrict for a lot of nights. It does restrict it to be a bit more, but we're able to balance between it. So if like one is bigger than the other, they can take a few extra and be like 18 and 10 rather than it be split down the middle, which is what we used to have. So
right, okay. Yeah, and of course it's in the same hall, so you can be flexible about how you divide it.
Flexible where it is. We've got this curtain divider that we can.
I was going to say, how do you divide the space? Because that gets very confusing.
So essentially, we use some scaffold poles, and it's on wheels, and it's got this big, thick cloth curtain between it.
Okay.
So we can move it to make each hall as big as we want, and we do that. So if one's much smaller, the other one will get more room. Right. And then you pull the curtain across, and it doesn't fully block out the sound, but it does create a physical separation and makes it quite clear in spaces for which. Yeah,
the psychological separation is the important thing.
Yeah, and it's quite a heavy curtain. I mean, it's got a few. we do. It's quite a hard hole, so it's a bit echoey right now. When we add some soundproofing to it, I think the curtain will mean that you pretty much are in two separate rooms.
Excellent. Well, I look forward to seeing it sometime. It sounds great.
Yeah, yeah. And
Are there any other? Are there any other permanent historical martial arts training spaces in London?
In London, no.
No, I didn't think so.
There is the only other one in the UK I'm aware of. No, there's two others in the UK I'm aware of. Sorry, there's one in Sheffield, the Valhalla Centre. They do a lot of axe throwing as well.
Right.
So it's not just HEMA; it's also kind of HEMA adjacent stuff. And Vanguard Centre in Glasgow,
Okay.
which is
Is that Keith Farrell's?
yeah. I mean, he's not there anymore, but yeah, he kind of set it up.
Yeah. Huh. Okay. Yeah. I mean, it's transformative. I remember I started my school in March 2001, and by June I'd found a permanent space. And as a business decision, it was probably terrible and totally unjustifiable, and I didn't care because it was clearly the right thing to do. And yeah, it makes all the difference.
It does. 100%.
And you can just organize whatever you want.
Exactly.
I've shot a bunch of my online courses in my SAL because the space is there.
Your space, you can use it, and we
have parties there as well.
Yeah, we're considering that too. We got some things coming up that we never would have been able to organise before, and it was easy. So we've got we've got armour fencing class coming up. We've got other kind of fun stuff coming up. They're doing a Halloween special, small sword and lantern class.
Oh, lovely.
Which turn all the lights off and play about with that, and a few other things that they're just fun things we can just. It's so much easier is the main thing.
Yeah.
Right. The hassle, weeks of work to find a venue in London, and sometimes the venues are like, oh no, yeah, sorry, last minute, sorry, we're going to prioritise this other booking instead of you. Which has happened to me more than once. I was thrilled about. So we know that that's not going to happen to us in our own venue at least. So that's good.
Excellent. Yeah, that's pretty good. So here we are, two middle-aged bald white dudes, I should say, talking about running clubs. So, of course, we're going to discuss diversity because we're so good at it. All right. So I've noticed, because I did a little bit of digging around on the internet, you seem to have a pretty diverse club. How do you encourage that, and what are the effects of your approaches?
Yeah. I mean, we do have a pretty diverse club, I think, at least in terms of gender diversity, and we have a large number of LGBT in our club as well. I noticed the picture of your space. You have like rainbow colours in the insides of the dressing rooms. So yeah, exactly that. Exactly, the dressing rooms are rainbow coloured. It is a constant thing, right? This is
sure.
If you want it, it's never once and done. Is the main thing. And it's one of the principles when we founded it. We said, like, this is something we want to aim for. And we've made mistakes along the way. Nothing's been perfect, but part of it is branding, right? You need to be kind of clear about this one. Some things people will look for as standard if they are worried about inclusivity are things like code of conducts. If you haven't got one, that will be an immediate red flag to somebody kind of looking into it. Likewise, getting images out there. If you are diverse, if you are as diverse as you can, getting images out there that show you're not just 10 bald white dudes with beards, as far as possible, again, is quite encouraging. But even with all of that, there is a snowball effect from it. And I had this, I was quite frustrated for a while, actually, that the club in general was more diverse than the longsword class. I could never understood why. And a large part of it, from speaking to people, was that actually we only had a couple of women in longsword. So when women came along, they were like, I don't want to be the only woman in longsword. And they were like, I don't want to stay here. I'm going to go do one of the other ones where there's more women. And that has kind of shifted over the years, which is good. But a lot of that is just constant messaging for it, constant actions to it. Our code of conduct goes out to every inquiry, so people get sent it straight away. We had lots of people say, great, love that you have this, really agree with it. Yeah. Sometimes we have people go silent and never show up. And that's also
so the code
working.
of conduct did its job.
Exactly that. It's working to make our lives easier. It's much easier that than showing up and dealing with it later.
Exactly.
Our committee has always had women on it. Has always been quite diverse from that side of things. So people in leadership positions where possible makes a big difference too. And then there's some small stuff like doing pride announcements and things like that. We did Give a Girl a Sword, which was something that Esfin has ran, where the intent was to get women in fencing. So we did a few free classes for women. We 1 year, one of the things we kind of did, and then some non-binary folk called us up on it. We kind of extended that to include non-binary offences as well, and I had some HEMA non-binary friends who reached out and said, actually, hang on, this isn't really the right way to do it. So the year after that, we ran our own flavour, which was called Blades Beyond the Binary, which was intended for the same idea as Give a Girl a Sword, but for trans and non-binary folk, essentially free class come along, purely class for that. And, that both actively getting people in from those classes, which is fewer than you might think, actually. We definitely have some really committed people that came through from those. But if a 14-person class for that, you're going to get 1 or 2. You're not going to get 14 kind of coming back regularly. But the very fact that you've done them and that they're part of that club persona or image, people have said to me, I saw that you did that way back when, and that looked really good, and that made me comfortable about joining and that kind of stuff. And the funny one is our logo, right? So our Facebook logo was a Pride Rainbow version of our official black and white logo, and we did it for Pride one year, and then it was, I think, like this time of year, November or something like that. I realized we hadn't changed it back, and I was like,
well, why change it?
Why? Just leave it up. Like, it's clearly doing its job. Like, there's no harm in leaving it up. Actually, it's better. So even small things like that can show that you are kind of receptive to it.
Yeah, and I guess it's consistent messaging over time.
Yeah. So
it's clear it's not just one woke person on the committee decided to do an event one day.
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah.
The other less pleasant side actually is that you've got to be willing to act on some of these things too. And when issues do come up, someone in who is acting in a way that is counter to that code of conduct, you've got to act on it. First talk to them and kick them out if necessary. In extreme versions of it.
How many people have you kicked out?
It's like 4 or 5. It's not many.
In 8 years. No,
right?
no.
So it's not even once a year, right? For sure. But yeah, it has happened.
But that's a lot. Hang on, but that's a lot more than none.
It's a lot more than none. Yeah, and there are many that have been short of kicking out, right? And actually, for the most part, we don't want to jump straight to, oh, you made one joke, you're out, right?
Yeah.
Most of the time, direct conversation from an instructor or committee member. This is why that's over the line. We need you to stop doing it. Is enough, right? And a lot of people have had that and corrected, and then that's been sufficient to kind of keep a nice friendly space that is inclusive for a variety of people.
Excellent. Okay, so what prompted you to start a company to do research into historical martial arts safety?
For most things, the way to convince me to do anything is to get me annoyed enough at the status quo.
Okay.
And this is really one of them. So I run a lot of stuff. I run the Historical Offensive Club. I also run the Wessex League tournaments. And in running a club and running a tournament and running even just a little event, like, you've got to make safety decisions, right?
Yeah.
And you've had to do it. Pretty much anybody organize anything has had to do it. And we make them particularly for the Wessex League based upon what we see, what our experience is, and all this kind of stuff. Mm-hmm. And I've had a lot of people over the years saying, well, why are you doing that? That's just your opinion, right? Or it's just based on anecdote. And it is true, but there's nothing else to base it on, right? By and large, there isn't really any research into HEMA safety, right? A lot of the stuff, the protective gear that we use, they've got safety standards for completely different purposes, right?
Yeah.
Most
have a safety standards basically for foil epee and saber.
Yep.
So like the puncture resistance on the jackets is for foil epee and saber, and the resistance in the masks is for foil epee and saber.
Yep. And the mask mesh is tested, right? They've got impact tests for it, but what they're worried about is a small stiff spike puncturing the mask, not a big heavy concussive blow. Right.
That's right.
So they're testing completely different things.
Yeah.
And HEMA's getting bigger, and I'm getting increasingly uncomfortable with making risk decisions based upon
guesswork and hearsay.
Exactly that.
Yeah.
And people are right that I'm not basing it on historical research because it doesn't exist. So the Safety Tips project was really the first thing that kind of sprung into thinking, what else could I do? And the Safety Tip project is basically trying to answer the original question I was trying to answer with it, or that looked like it would be more stuff as well, is particularly for rapier. Mm-hmm. What should you do with the tip of your sword, right? And I've seen so many different answers to that question. Like some people say, pretty much no one uses just a rounded off rapier tip these days.
25 years ago, I stuck one of those 4 inches into somebody's leg by
These
accident.
days, we
That was 25 years ago. I learned very quickly. And
Yeah.
that's not hearsay. That's personal experience. And I will never use one of those rapiers ever again.
absolutely right. But so most people will then put something on the end of it, and what that could be anything. I've seen bullet cases. I've seen rubber tips for archery bluns. I've seen walking stick tips. I've seen different varieties of plastic, leather. Thermoplastic is the one that we promote in the Wessex League, which is kind of malleable at heat, and you bolt it to shape. Which one is better? Right, was the simple question I wanted to answer. Because we made a decision to stop allowing rubber tips. We had a few cases of mass getting pushed into people's heads and concussions from rubber tips. We were kind of on the fence, and then a few more cases happened, and we decided.
So hang on, so you're distinguishing between rubber and plastic?
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay.
Anything.
So what's the difference?
Soft versus hard, really. So even the hardest rubber, it has some give to it, and the thought that was playing out with what we were seeing was that these soft tips, especially when they hit to a mask, have this tendency to stick to the mask rather than glance off it. And we were seeing a lot of cases of masks being pushed into people's faces, as I said, and kind of a few concussions or near concussions, and were concerned about it and said, okay, we'd been keeping our eye on it, we'd been debating it, and then a few more happened in one event, and we were like, okay, we're done. Like, this is it. We were on the fence, and we're now not on the fence. So we switched to hard tips only was the rule for anything, but particularly for rapier, which required tips. But then, is it better? Right, is a fairly simple question. And I came up with a couple of experiments where I kind of thought, well, could this work? I don't know. To test both whether different tips affect how likely it is for a sword to glance off a mask or to stick to a mask. For one of the risks that we were worried about, and of course the second risk, the one that you talked about, stabbing someone, right?
Yes,
pretty
puncturing.
bad. Which tips affect that and how much?
I've also seen a rolled tip longsword go into somebody's arm through the skin.
There was one fairly recently in a tournament in Prague where a rolled tip longsword, I think it was rolled tip, might have been flared, but either way, punctured straight through the Spez jacket. Spez light, I think it was, but still it punctured through it, right? It's not pleasant. You don't want it. No one was injured with that one.
Well, that's lucky.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, those spade tip things, I think they're horrendous.
Oh, you mean the historical...
Those flared tips. Because historically, their job was to split your head open.
Yeah, I know. I had
So
someone...
what the fuck are people doing putting them on swords where you don't want to split somebody's head open?
The first time I fenced someone with
fuck?
that, yeah, 100% agree. 100% agree. The first time I fenced someone with one of those, he was like, oh, it's a historical replica. And I was like, can I have a look at it closely? I'll go fence someone else now. Thank you very much. Right? I mean, it was very flexible, but even so, it was super thin at the end. And this is
because it's for cutting.
For cutting, exactly that. Right? Missed the point. No pun intended. On what that's supposed to be for. So yeah, that was the main reason we wanted to do this. And then I realized there's lots of other research projects that could spin from that. So it was originally to structure for that stuff, but I've also been looking at safety standards. So I've been able to look at a lot of the different safety standards for different sports and what they entail and what they actually measure. And one of my other projects right now, for the Wessex League, we decided to do a bit more rigorous sword checks than we had in the past. So I've expanded that to be able to record even more data about swords and linking it to injury and breakage information. Once I've got that process down, I'm hoping to work with other tournaments so that they can also collect kind of similar information and start understanding sword patterns of breakage, like what's durable, what's causing injuries. Because again, stiffness or point type or all this kind of stuff, manufacturers make their choices. They don't even list them in a consistent fashion, let alone have any kind of common message for testing it. Like if you see flex.
And at the end of the day, no matter what you do, you're hitting somebody with a 4-foot-long steel fucking bar.
Yep.
It is not
100%
safe.
It's never going to be 100% safe. 100%. Yep. But definitely we can understand what's risky and what's not risky a bit better.
My reservations around equipment generally is that it leads to complacency, right? And I found, like, my students who have experience of slow speed sparring with sharps and no protection fence differently with when they're wearing protection and they're using blunts, because they know what they're trying to simulate and they know what it feels like to actually treat the sword as like a really dangerous object, which it is. But when you put a rubber point on the end, it's disguised as a safe object, and we kind of make all sorts of misjudgments about the level of risk we're actually engaging with.
I don't think it has to lead to complacency. This happens. People say that a lot, and certainly there are people who, when they're cheered up, are complacent, right? But I think that's, and probably they wouldn't be complacent if they were naked with sharps. Yeah, fine. But I also don't think you necessarily have to become complacent about safety just because you are kitted up. For me, where I find the most risks come are actually when there's a mismatch of expectations. The event that I went to many years ago that had the most injuries that kind of made me sit up was just an open sparring event, right? It was just a free open sparring event in London. A bunch of clubs came. The problem is none of these clubs were really interacting. They all had very different expectations of, well, what's an appropriate force level? What's the right kit? What's the appropriate sword, right? And there was no explicit conversation between people to kind of match levels and understand what's going on. And I think there were like three hand injuries that went to hospital. I got a cut on my hand. I didn't go to hospital, but my hand got cut. I was wearing also I wasn't using unsuitable equipment. I was using Red Dragons for steel longsword. This was 9 years ago, so there's that too. But when things change and you don't realize it, that's when I think the biggest issues happen. The only 2 times I've injured someone in tournament have both been in tournaments with provided swords, where the sword was stiffer and heavier than the sword I normally use. And it might be a coincidence, right? Or it might be that I was fencing in a way that was completely appropriate for the weapon that I was using and used to, and hadn't done the adaptation to realize the risks have changed. I need to adapt my behaviors to go with it.
That's tricky. So why form a limited liability company to do this?
Yeah, a few reasons. One, I wasn't quite comfortable with so we ran a Kickstarter. And to raise the funds for the safety tips experiment, which is the first one we ran. And I wasn't comfortable that going through my personal account per se, and I wasn't comfortable that going through the club account. As well as that, this is important research. I want it to be done. It's also very time consuming and quite expensive. And most of HEMA runs on free labor, and I've dedicated a lot of free labor to HEMA over the 10 years. And I decided that this is something that is going to benefit HEMA across the world. I think it's reasonable for my time to be paid for it. So
you're getting no argument from me. I mean, I've been getting paid for my time since 2001. So.
Exactly. But then also for the people who are collaborating with me on it, I wanted to make sure that it's recognized what it is. As well as that, I've got other things coming up where I wanted to put everything through it. So the company will also be where any proceeds from book sales and things like that go through. Historical competitive research isn't just safety research; it's also the normal traditional research of into this text or writing training documents and that kind of stuff. It's just that the safety research stuff needs to be kind of community funded, whereas the other stuff is probably going to be kind of self-funded from book sales or anything like that. So,
because the first thing that sprung to my mind is that when you do this research, you will come up with a set of recommendations. Right, that's the point of it, right?
Yep, 100%.
Okay, and when you come up with a set of recommendations, you immediately become vulnerable to people who are following or think they are following those recommendations and get injured nonetheless. And if you have a limited liability company, right, they decide to sue you, well, you can just fold the company and walk away.
It's the company, exactly that.
It's the company.
That is not.
It's a useful legal distinction.
Yep, that is not out of my mind either. And there is a lot of risk involved. Like if I stand out and say to whatever there is, 100,000 people, you should do it this way, and they all do it, great.
Somebody's going to get hurt anyway.
But someone will get hurt anyway, and actually, to your point, what you're saying earlier about we're hitting each other with big heavy swords. I don't think there's any safety.
4-foot-long steel bars was the expression I used.
Exactly.
the expression I used.
There is no way of turning the risk to zero, right? We can lower the risk, we can understand what they are, and we can make choices about it. but we're not going to be able to make no risk decisions and still do what we
But
want.
I am fascinated to know the results of the tip experiment. So could you just run us through, because it was just last weekend that you did them, so
Just
could you
last
just run
weekend.
us through how the experiment was set up, what you were looking for,
Yeah.
and what you found, if you can speak to that.
Absolutely. So there are two experiments that kind of go at the same time. Like we're testing for two different risks, and as I say, the first risk we're worried about is, does the sword hit and push on a mask, or does it slide off? Right, and pushing on the mask bad, slide off good. Second risk, does a sword hitting skin, flesh, is it likely to puncture it, or how much less or more likely is it to puncture? So we have two different experiments, right? The first one, the concussion experiment, essentially what we have is we have a movable stand. It's a boxing ball stand that's been pretty heavily beefed up to take a hit from a sword, and we put a mask on the ball. We then attach an accelerometer to the stand, so that when the mask is struck by the sword, it moves, and we can measure the acceleration that gets transferred to the stand, which would be equivalent to the acceleration transferred to your head, which would be bad. In case that wasn't clear.
It's good to be really specific, because not everyone listening has ever set up an experiment.
Yeah.
In fact, I would wager that most haven't.
That's fair. Yeah, I had not done one until not fully until this weekend either. We also had a secondary measure on that one because there were some issues with the accelerometers. So the secondary measure was we had a person stand to the side to assess how far it moved, and that gave us a rough indication of whether it skipped off the mask, whether it was a relatively light hit or was a heavier hit. That was more of our backup plan just in case the accelerometers didn't work out, because it turns out accelerometers are quite difficult to work with. And
honestly, anyone who was doing electric saber in the early 90s curses the very word accelerometer.
I'm getting there. I've been the last 3 days. I've been, I do data and stuff in my day job. I can program. I can do Python and stuff like that. If I couldn't, we would be screwed, because it is difficult to get the information out in a meaningful way. But thankfully, we're mostly there. So that was experiment one. Experiment two was the puncture test. And what we did for that one, we set up what we call a drop rig, right? So we have these vertical bars that have a smooth, controlled drop. And essentially we clamp a sword between them. And then when the sword drops, it drops in a completely vertically, straight down, pretty much at the force of gravity. And we can adjust the height.
It's consistent.
It's consistent, right? It doesn't wobble. With the sword clamped in place and moving correctly, the target area we're going to hit is about a 2 centimeter diameter consistently. It will not go outside of that diameter.
Yeah.
So it's very, very consistent, smooth, and accurate drop. And by adjusting the height, we can then adjust the force levels that are in the drop, or the energy levels in the drop, rather. And we then have a target at the bottom, and we're able to see, does it puncture the target? And if it does puncture the target, how far does it puncture the target? And then from knowing the weight of the sword and the frame, and the height we drop it, we can calculate what was the energy in the drop, and how does the energy in the drop relate to whether and how deep it punctures the target.
Okay, so how did you make the strikes to the mask on Bob consistent?
Yeah, the strikes to the mask. So Bob is the name of the stand, because I wanted to name him. And the way we did it, we had the four experimenters each took in turns to strike. We all did the same strikes. And what we had a defined pattern of strikes, where we set the start position and where we were targeting on the mask. And they were then done in a random order. So the spreadsheet we had randomized the order, but you did all the same strikes over that period. And the start positions were either on the right, on the middle, or on the left, so equivalent to kind of third, the middle guard, and fourth. And you were either striking to the right of the target, the middle of the target, or the left of the target. And every combination, right? So you could start on the right.
Was this with a rapier?
With both, right? With both conditions we did. Rapier was the first experiment we tested. Rapier with different tips. We also did an experiment testing different varieties of longswords. We tested both of those. Okay. Both of those went through both experiments on the same
right.
So each person did that same pattern for each condition we had. So that means we got about 100 strikes per condition, a bit over 100 strikes. So if we're testing 4 types of rapier tip, that's 400 and something strikes for testing that one thing. We also have an accelerometer on the sword, as well as the target. So that means we're able to compare how strong the hit from the sword was compared to how strong the force transferred to the target was. So that means we can directly measure the speed of the strength of the hit versus the strength of the target. And the defined pattern means that at least it's the same defined pattern. So any randomness about hit location is the same randomness for each condition. So it means that we can
I think having the accelerometer on the sword is probably the critical bit.
Yeah.
Because, different people are going to strike with different levels of force anyway.
Exactly that. Yeah, exactly that.
Okay.
And in theory, if the mask is not doing its job, right, and things are sticking to the mask, what we'll expect to see is a completely linear relationship. So the harder the hit, the more the mask moves.
Yes.
And if there's skipping off or there's something that's stopping it from connecting properly, then what we'll see is some very hard hits not moving the mask very far. And it's pretty straightforwardly recognizable in the data.
Okay. And so what have you concluded?
So we haven't fully done the stats yet. So any conclusions to say now are tentative. I'll stress that.
Fair enough. And this is going out in a few weeks. So when you have your results, send them to me. I'll stick them in the show notes. So people who want to see the exact kind of fully worked out stuff, it'll be in the show notes probably by the time this goes live.
Okay, cool, good. Yeah, good, fine. We should be able to get some stats in a couple of weeks.
Excellent.
So we didn't really find any obvious differences with comparing different longsword brands. So we compared, we had a Sigi Light, a Sigi Maestro, a Vergennier Stiff, and an Orius Alexander 3.
Hang on, I thought you were measuring tips, not swords.
So we had a few different things to test, right? We had some stretch experiments that we asked people to comment on to our backers, and our backers voted that they wanted to have testing longsword brands higher than testing other longswords within tips, so we did that one.
Oh, okay.
Our third experiment that we would have done if we had the time was testing longsword tips, and we're going to have to go back and do that one, I think, because I think...
Okay, so you tested longsword models, not longsword tips.
Longsword brands. So these were all untipped.
Untipped. Okay. So did you find any significant differences?
I don't think so. Right. Certainly there were small differences in the numbers, but I think when we do the stats, I don't think they're going to be significant. I think they're just going to be kind of random chance.
So one longsword is pretty much as safe as another in this regard.
In this regard, it seemed to be, at least. Yeah, it seemed to be.
Interesting.
Or
That's
the differences are small, at least. And considering, right, on one end of the spectrum we have a stiff-bladed Vergennier.
Yeah.
And on the other, we have the Sigi Light, which is like 1,200 grams and like a 6 kilogram flex. It's very light
and very wobbly. Yeah.
I was expecting bigger differences from some of that than we saw. So maybe there will be small differences that appear in the stats, but there'll be small differences.
Okay.
The tip test, even before I ran the accelerometer numbers to kind of confirm it, was very, very obvious.
Really?
Even just looking at it was very obvious, and the numbers, kind of stressed it. So, untipped rapiers, we have confirmed, are very dangerous.
Yes. Yes, I know. I told you that.
Yes, exactly that. Surprise to no one. We really struggled to find a height where we didn't penetrate our target. And the target that we have is, it's ballistic gel, at 20%. So most guns are tested on 10% ballistic gel. So we've doubled the strength. We then got a layer of foam, and we then got a layer of chamois leather, right? This is based upon what some people have used to try and simulate the full body of... So ballistic gel simulates muscle. Yeah. Foam simulates fat. Chamois simulates skin, right? Yeah. So we pretty much couldn't not puncture that target with a rapier.
Okay. So your rapier just has a kind of smooth, rounded tip.
Smooth, rounded tip, right? No flaring at all. It's quite... Right,
yeah, my training rapier has a nail head.
Yeah.
So I think that you'd probably find quite different.
With a nail head, I think we'd find a difference. Yeah, it's just rounded off. Right? Literally just a little dome ground off. That's it.
So technically not sharp.
Technically not sharp. It's still, it's probably about 2 or 3 millimeters thick at the end, but it's really not very thick.
Okay.
And so that was really bad for puncturing. But it was also really good at skipping off. Right? It didn't stick to a mask at all, kind of as predicted. So no surprises really on that one. The big surprises were bullet cases, which a lot of people use still, were only slightly better than.
Sorry, are you using bullet cases just as by themselves?
Yeah.
Okay, I always used to use bullet before the people actually developed proper tips for rapiers. I was using archery blunts because that's what we had access to, and I would wear through an archery blunt every few weeks. And a friend of mine said, put a shell casing inside the archery blunt, and its purpose was to stop the tip of my sword going through the archery blunt.
Yeah.
I wouldn't want to use just like the brass, because that's nasty.
Plenty of people still do. They're still
That's
very
ridiculous.
Common. I did a survey at fight camp of who was using
Yeah.
what, and bullet cases were, they weren't ubiquitous, but they're not the most common, but it is common to see them, right?
Just on their own.
Just on their own, right? 303. We used a 303 brass bullet case.
Okay.
It was the second worst in both tests, basically.
Yeah.
So it was slightly less dangerous in terms of puncturing than untipped.
But only slightly.
And it still stuck to the mask quite a lot, right?
But brass is sticky.
Brass is sticky, and it got damaged quite a bit from 100 strikes to a mask.
Yeah.
It was pretty damaged by the end of it, and there was some sharp burrs on the mask as well. We tested the mask damage. We did a different mask per condition to test for damage as well.
Yeah.
So it wasn't the most pleasant. So that was worse than I expected. The rubber behaved pretty much exactly as I expected it to. So it did indeed stick to the mask. It made it more likely to transfer force to the mask, and it vastly increased. It also increased the highest reading that we saw. So it basically made the likelihood and the severity of the risk it both increased from using rubber for pushing on the mask.
Okay.
It was pretty good at not puncturing targets, and
that's what we always used it for.
Yeah, and when we had to actually change the target, so we didn't get a puncture on the target I just described of ballistic gel foam leather. At the highest height I was happy to drop it at, which came to it was half a meter, comes to 30 joules for context because no one knows what a joule is. Motorcycle equipment is tested at 50 joules. Fencing equipment is tested at 10 joules, right? So 30 joules is a substantial
That's a lot of force.
Yeah, a lot of force. So we thought, well, what if we take off the top layer? So we just do the ballistic gel.
Yeah.
Because it's a softer target we can do. And with that, we got a puncture at about 20 centimeters or 25, if I remember. So it was still a lot of force before it punctured even just the ballistic gel.
Yeah.
So that was pretty good. Made some quite spectacular holes when it did. But it was a lot of force to get through that target. The surprise for me was that plastic did better than rubber on the puncture test.
Really?
Yeah, and
surprises me too.
I wasn't expecting it. So we matched.
By did better, you mean was safer?
Was safer.
Yeah.
Was safer. So we matched the diameter of the rubber and the plastic so that wasn't a factor.
Yeah, you'd have to.
The difference that we did in shape was that the rubber was domed, because that's how those tips normally end up. So it's just kind of a big round dome, but domed nonetheless. Whereas we used an archery blunt, which is kind of ridged on the outside with a little recess on the inside. So one is convex, one is concave. That's really the only difference between the two of them in terms of shape. And size was, as I say, pretty similar. We couldn't get a puncture with the plastic tip on either medium.
Wow.
Up to, that
That
whole
surprises me.
I wasn't expecting that. I was expecting rubber to be better at puncturing, worse at puncturing, better on that wrist. Than plastic, and plastic to come second. But no, plastic outperformed it. We even had some spare targets because we were going to do a third experiment, but we ran out of time because we had some issues.
Yeah.
So we had some spare targets, so we ran it again.
You had some technical issues with your highly technical experiment. What a surprise.
A lot of technical issues, a lot of last minute adjustments, and
of course.
And things had to happen, which slowed us down, but it made for better results in the end. So that was a shock. And then plastic also was pretty much equivalent to the untipped for skipping off. It might be slightly worse, or it might be the difference. I'm not sure if that's significant or not. But it was pretty similar to it, and certainly better than the other two. So that was quite a shock.
I just wandered off to make sure that my tips are plastic, not rubber. They're plastic.
Good.
They're new, or newish.
Yeah, good. Yeah, so yeah, definitely for the rapier, it was pretty uncontrovertible, even before I'd done the stats analysis, that plastic came out on top, because it was...
And by a way.
By a way, yeah.
Interesting.
Yeah.
So basically you can go to someone who's thinking of running a rapier tournament and say, look, the only tips you can legitimately allow are plastic for this reason.
Yep, absolutely.
Right?
Yep.
And if you go ahead with allowing bullet casings or anything else, then you are culpable of negligence.
So let me just put this into context for that puncturing thing. Just pull the numbers up. Right. So to put the energy levels we're talking about in a bit of context, right? Mm-hmm. We were puncturing 2 centimeters into our human equivalent target with an untipped rapier at less than 1 joule.
Wow.
Right. We actually had a funny moment in the other test. We accidentally there's a tin can on the boxing stand to add weight to it for reasons. We accidentally punched that and punctured through the tin can with the untipped sword. So pretty bad, right? But 1 joule, you can easily hit 1 joule of energy with any kind of thing, right? We didn't get a puncture on the softer target with plastic at 35 joules.
Jesus.
So it's way
more than 30 times safer.
Way more than 30 times safer than leaving an untipped sword. And even bullet cases, right? So bullet cases, we were puncturing that at about 12 joules, right? So that, it's
a lot better than untipped.
A lot better than untipped. Yep.
Okay.
No, wait, sorry. Scratch that. My apologies. This is because we did some extra tests on the bullet case, and that's on the softer target for comparison. Sorry. That 12 joule one. No, my apologies. So bullet cases were puncturing the original soft target at about 8 joules, right?
Okay.
So 8 times better than an untipped sword, right?
Yeah.
When we used it on the softer target, it was still about 12 joules, right? So plastic.
Why would it require more energy on the softer target? That doesn't make sense.
I can't read my target. I've got that backwards. That's why.
That makes more sense.
They've got that backwards. Yeah, it's 12 on the hard target, and
by hard target you mean simulating skin
flesh
and fat.
Exactly that. Yeah. So on the softer target, it was about twice the chance of puncturing, right? But then again, we got to 35, so not quite. More than 4 times as much as that, and still weren't puncturing again on the plastic. So it's not a small difference.
So a plastic. So basically, your inescapable conclusion is if you're fencing with rapiers, use plastic tips and nothing else until something else gets invented that is demonstrated to be better.
Absolutely. And it's worth pointing out as well that these are quite large plastic tips. I don't know whether we'd see the same in smaller tips, for instance.
Well, that's the thing. What's the diameter of the tip?
These were 18 millimeter diameter for both the rubber and the plastic.
Yeah, that's about what I would expect. That's about what I've got in the end of mine.
We essentially matched to the archery blunts that people were using, right? So we found what archery blunts people were using at fight camp. We said, okay, that's the size that people are using. So we said, okay, we'll match to that. Even at that size, the thermoplastic we use, you're adding about 12 grams of weight. It's nothing, right?
Do you still have your rigs?
Yeah, 100%. Yes.
Okay. Yeah. Because what I'm thinking of is, I have... I know friends in America who use plastic tips, which are literally branded for being used as rapier tips. That manufacturer should send you a box of those and have them tested so they can demonstrate that their particular brand, this size, this model, has this effect.
Yep.
And of course, you could charge them for that.
I have considered it, yes. For how that will work, potentially. I also want to do some more follow-up kind of open experiments as well.
Of course.
Because I think that...
I was going to ask, what's the next experiment? Is it tips for longswords?
I think tips for longsword is the next candidate. Like we did a few preliminary tests. We had a few spare targets. The longsword rig was set up. So we tried this one longsword. We just added the height where it was already puncturing, we added a leather tip, we added a rubber tip because we could easily do it. And the same height, it doesn't puncture. So it clearly has an effect, right?
Yeah.
How much effect? We didn't have targets to check. And, is plastic better? We didn't check the other condition. I think there's definitely legs in trying it for longsword, because then we've tried kind of the two extremes of HEMA, and if the same pattern appears for both of those, actually it's probably true of anything in between as well.
Yeah, one thing I'll be very interested in is getting you to test my Terry Tyndall style fencing mask, and how much force gets delivered into my head when I get hit with a longsword versus a regular fencing mask.
Unfortunately, the rig wouldn't work for that.
No, this would be a whole separate experiment.
Could we do it? We could. The issue is weight, right? So the fencing mask versus the Terry Tyndall mask is a very small difference in weight compared to you or a human.
Yeah.
Not you specifically, a human. But it's very big compared to our movable rig. So that was one of the issues we had at first, actually. The rig was too light, and we were blowing past the accelerometer. I had to add some weight to it to basically slow it down. But if it's a twofold increase in weight, it's got a much bigger effect on this measurement than it would understanding what would happen to a human. We could probably control for that. It would be doable. Like, we could control for the weight somehow.
Because
I'm not sure it would work.
My experience has been that they are just vastly better than fencing masks for preventing, for making it so that your friend can hit you carefully in the head without significant risk of injury.
Yeah.
Right? I phrased that very carefully. Right?
Yep.
People in full armor in the 15th century were killed with longswords. So,
exactly.
Yep. No amount of equipment is going to keep you safe.
And actually, on that point, for the mask skipping off test, this is a really good point, because while some tips were more likely to skip off and some tips reduced the likelihood of a heavy hit, there was no combination of weapon or tip type that we tried that didn't have some heavy hits. Right?
No, of course.
So even the best tip that we're recommending here, right? It's not a risk-free tip. And what was really interesting, it was so hard there was no way of working out whether something was likely to. There's some conditions that make it more or less likely that because a heavy hit happened. Like the more direct it is to the fencing mask, so like a sword coming from the right to the right of the fencing mask, so it hits on the flat of the mask, is slightly more likely to hit hard. But some of those skip off, and some of the other ones hit hard, right? There's no.
I think a lot of it. I do like striking to break stuff as well as striking to not break people, right? And it's pretty straightforward to hit somebody lightly in the head if you've got the proper training.
Yeah.
It is pretty straightforward to smash through a fencing mask if that's what you want to do.
Yeah.
It doesn't matter what tip's on there.
Yeah.
Because you can put, you were dropping a sword 1/2 meter, and that was all the force you wanted. I can literally put the force of both my legs behind my sword.
Yeah.
Right, which is like an ungodly amount of power compared to dropping the sword 1/2 meter down.
Well, it's 1/2 meter. It also has the weight of it's got a 6 kilogram weight added to it from the rig.
Yeah, I weigh 80 kilograms.
It's a lot more force than you think.
No, I know it's a lot of force, but I can carry a 6 kilo weight upstairs. I can do jumping jacks with a 6 kilo weight. But the amount of power available there is vastly more.
Yeah,
so my point is just that no amount of having safe equipment is going to protect people if the person they are fencing hits them hard, because a human being can develop a huge amount of force.
Yeah, and for the mass test, we were all intentionally doing it as if we were fencing, not as if we were trying to kill someone.
Yeah, exactly.
Because that was the most interesting way of doing it.
Oh, I would be very interested to see how, because I train to hit hard and I also train to hit barely at all, if you know what I mean.
Yeah.
I would be very curious to test the actual difference between me when I really want to hurt somebody, not that I would ever do such a thing, and me when I'm at my, if you like, fencing level.
These are many of these things are things that I'm hoping to test in future through historical fencing research. Right?
Well, if you ever need any help, let me know.
Yeah.
Ipswich is 2 hours away from Vauxhall.
Well, the tests were actually between Ipswich. They were in my parents' house, which is kind of halfway between London and Ipswich. Actually, it's
Oh, right.
kind of
Okay.
just the other side of Bury St Edmunds from you. So
You're kidding.
yeah, so not.
Oh, right. Well,
so much closer to Ipswich. Yeah.
all right. Well, just let me know if you need any help.
Yeah, and there were lots of things I want to test in future in terms of like cut strength, in terms of like measuring different force levels. The test that people wanted from our backers that we decided not to do for two reasons was the effect of protective equipment, because of course we're not stabbing unprotected targets most of the time. So puncture resistant equipment, other like an actual jacket, that kind of stuff. Which
That's difficult to, because you're not going to put a tipped weapon through a jacket with any kind of experiment that makes sense.
Yeah. I mean, we could get to the conclusion that we had with this, which is that it won't go through, right? So maybe that's why bullets seem to be fine, because they don't go through protective equipment, but they do go through soft targets. Could be, don't know. But we also want to test other aspects of protective equipment, which is why we decided to delay it, right? So it matters not just does it stab you, but does it hurt, right? Did you break a rib? So measurements of things like, well, how much force is dissipated by a Spez jacket versus just a regular Olympic coaching jacket. That requires developing some kind of other things to do it, and also cuts versus thrusts. Like a rig can do thrusting mechanics quite easily, but we can't do cutting mechanics in the same kind of controlled fashion just yet. So that's a whole different kind of setup for it. So hopefully we can get those kind of built too, which will allow us to do sort of more comprehensive reviews of protective equipment and how good it is and relatively how good it is.
And it would be interesting to measure what a full force lunge actually generates.
Yeah.
So you would know how close your rig is to, I mean, if it's 30 joules, then you're bang on. If it's only 20, then maybe you don't need to go so high. And if it's 60, then maybe you need to go higher.
Yeah, I tried to do that, sadly, but
Difficult to do.
It is. So I mean, it's relatively straightforward. The technical way of setting it up, you use force sensors, and they're essentially the same things that go in your bathroom scales, but they take more faster readings, right? And they're quite hard to set up directly. I bought a boxing punch force testing thing to try it out, and I thought maybe this might work as a quick test. Unfortunately, because it's designed for you to hit it with your hand, it's soft, so it doesn't really work with the kind of the tip sizes that we're talking about. So we thought we'd try and use that to judge it. But 30 joules, if you see
it's a lot of force.
It's a lot of force. It's more than you will see in the finals of a tournament. The amount of bend on my swords just from dropping on this target from those, I was a bit like, I don't want to go higher because I want my swords to survive.
Fair enough.
So I'm definitely confident that if it can survive 30 joules, it's going to do good things for most people.
Oh, for sure. And again, people shouldn't be hitting each other that hard. I'm just curious because I'm interested in the martial side of things more than the sporting side. Yeah. So it'll be interesting to get some measurements on how hard I can actually hit.
Yeah. I'd love to know it. And the flip side of that is that I think where we would have got an interesting distinction between the long swords is actually on the force transferred rather than the puncture aspects to it.
Yeah.
Because
I mean, the flex has to do something.
Has to go somewhere. I had a slow-mo video of one of my tests when I was doing early tests for the rapier, the puncturing thing. And when I watched it in slow-mo, what was really interesting, because it was a target, not a human, was that when the sword first touched the target, this was the softer target, this is before we added the skin layer, this is kind of one of the things that led to it. When the sword touches the target, it doesn't flex at all until it goes enough into the target that then it's got enough resistance to start flexing. So on that initial point of contact, flex meant no difference at all, which is why I think we didn't see any differences in the long swords, because it was kind of before the flex kicked in for it. That's kind of an interesting and terrifying result depending on how you look at it.
That's fabulous. Okay, now is there anything we haven't discussed about the experiments that you'd like to mention?
About the experiments, no, I think most of that we've covered. I think, as I said, we've got a lot of kind of follow-up experiments we're planning, and other ones I'm going to be running through historical fencing research.
Okay. And make sure you let me know when you're raising funds, because I don't see any party that's held on the internet. So I don't do the Facebooky thing. The only reason I knew about yours is because one of my students happened to see it and happened to think I might be interested. And so I could back it and tell other people to back it and all that sort of thing. but contact me directly. I'll be happy to stick this in newsletters and podcast intros and whatever.
I will, absolutely.
It's really important work, and I'm very glad you're doing it.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And I think that's the main thing we need to do differently next time is crowdfunding. The Kickstarter took a massive cut of our funds.
I don't really do crowdfunding directly through a platform like that anymore for basically that reason.
Exactly.
They pay you late and they keep a monstrous chunk of it.
Amount, more than I expected. So that was a challenge. But so as soon as we can work out how we're funding the next round, which will probably go through the historicalfencingresearch.com website. We'll be looking at some follow-up experiments. The ones I've discussed today, and as I say, I'm looking at kind of doing some research to try and understand tournament swords and their use and how they, actual injury patterns and how they relate to which swords are in use and breakage and that kind of stuff. And other projects. I've got a list of projects that I will not be getting through this year. That much is for sure.
No, well, the year's almost done.
True, or next year even.
Okay, well, speaking of projects, I do understand you have a book on your interpretation coming out at some point.
Yes, hopefully next year.
What is it?
It's Vadi, of course. As to be expected. It is kind of building on for what I've used as my beginner's curriculum for a while, and again, it's part of the things that motivate me. If things annoy me enough, I'll do it. And I've not liked most interpretation books that I've read. I've not read them all by any stretch of the imagination.
Interpretations of Vadi?
Not specifically of Vadi, of anything, any way that people have presented interpretation, because they kind of go through like, here's all the footwork, here's all the cuts, here's all the guards, right?
Oh yeah.
Out of context. So what I've done is I've taken the beginner's curriculum, so it will also go with lesson plans that go with it, all of which have tactical context. Every class in that has tactical context built into it. And rather than start with going through the comprehensive aspects of it, the text goes through each of those and gives the theory relevant to each section. So it comes with the curriculum attached to it. And then there's things that go beyond the beginner's curriculum that kind of cover off the other aspects. And
so
then
it's very much a training manual.
Training manual, but it's also going through the theory that underpins the training, right? So whether you are using it to structure the lessons or whether you're just using it for the theory, you could use it for either or both, right? It was originally designed to be, I want to give my students the theory about the class they just taught, and then it morphed into something bigger. Because in doing it that way, you're getting all of the relevant bits of theory for a specific part. So you're not going to see everything about all the guards in week one, but you're going to see stuff about some of the guards in week one.
I did this with my medieval longsword. Because
I haven't read that one, so I don't have all of
that's fine. That's all right. It was like 2011 or something, or 2010 I was writing it. And I was giving a lecture and I was chatting about various aspects of things. So I thought, hang on, I've got two ways of structuring this book and I haven't really had a chance to talk to the sort of people who might buy it about how they would like it. And I asked, so should I have like all the footwork here, all the guards here, all the blows here, this sort of technique there, that sort of technique there, whatever, or should I organize it the way I would actually teach it in class, more or less? Obviously It's a book, so it's going to be a bit different.
Exactly.
And there are about 450 people in the room, and I asked for a show of hands, and I got, I think 3 people wanted it separated out by topic, and all the rest were like organize it the way you teach it.
Exactly.
So it makes a lot more sense if it's a training manual.
Yeah. I mean, we'll have details
as a reference resource. For reference, it's probably easier to do it the other way.
So my plan is
for training, it's much better.
Yeah, the reference material, I think I agree. I'm going to put it at the end, basically.
Yeah.
So so once you've kind of understood it and you've embedded it and you understand the basic system and how it all fits together. Yeah, sometimes you're going to be like, oh, I only remember 11 of the guards. What's the other one, right? And you want to check all the guards in one place rather than kind of hunt through the book. As reference material, that all makes perfect sense, right?
Yeah.
It's just not the way you would ever first be presented to it and be expected to kind of understand it and follow it in any stretch of the imagination.
And actually do it, yeah.
So that's what I'm working on. Again, I'm hoping that one's sometime next year as well for bringing that one out too.
Well, good luck. And you're going to publish that through Lulu or?
Probably through Lulu.
Why Lulu?
Because I can get it out there easily and change it if I need to in future, as you said.
But their print costs are horrendous.
I still could explore that one. Yeah, I could explore that one still.
Okay. I have thoughts on that, which are probably not terribly interesting to most people listening. So if you want my thoughts on that, just we can
I
chat
would,
later.
I'd welcome them. Yeah. You've published many books and I've published none, so I'd be stupid not to take them.
Right. So, well, just Lulu has its place. There are some things that it's probably for some people the best option. But I mean, the biggest reason to not use Lulu, I think, is that the Alliance of Independent Authors doesn't rate them as a service they can recommend to their members.
Fair enough. Okay, good to know.
Yeah. And that's mostly because their print costs are like double what they should be.
Right. Yeah.
So there's a whole bunch of options out there, which again, they didn't exist necessarily 15 years ago, but over the last 15 years, there's been this explosion of self-publishing tools. So we have a ton of stuff. Cool. And we can chat it through. When you think you're close to ready and you know what the book is actually going to be like, drop me a line and we'll
happily
chat about it.
Thank you for that. Yep.
Yeah, no problem. Okay, so you have a metric fuck ton of good ideas. What is the best idea you haven't acted on yet?
Ooh, that's a good one.
It's not the book, because clearly you're acting on that, and it's not the research experiments, because clearly you're acting on that. I mean, is there a werewolf vampire romance novel that you've always wanted to write?
Afraid not. No. Well, obviously I've got several novels in my head, but they'll definitely never happen. I'm not sure they'd be my best ideas either.
Okay.
I do have plans I've been kind of idly toying with. I used actually undershirts for HEMA.
What?
So this is people don't normally do this. So particularly for tournament.
Do you say undershirts?
Undershirts, right?
Oh, like rash guards and that sort of thing.
So a bit like a rash guard, except for with protection built into it. I have some quite unusual protective setup in that I've moved a lot of protection underneath the jacket rather than on top of the jacket that people would normally have there, which allows using a lighter jacket and being more maneuverable while still retaining protection. And particularly the stuff I use for my arm guards, it's quite difficult to get in this country, and it's kind of a pain to attach in terms of how it currently is. So I have a long-standing plan that I've not really done anything on, because I also use rugby shirts that have shoulder padding, some rib padding, but it's in all the wrong places for a lot of things. It's just much better in terms of maneuverability to move your protection to an underlayer than to try and put it on top, because it doesn't add bulk. It doesn't stop you from doing things like crossing your arms and that kind of stuff. That anyone who's tried to do Fenestra or Sagittaria or whatever, Ox, if you want to talk German, is cursed in pretty much any modern HEMA kit.
That's why I don't use any modern HEMA kit. I got my kit stuff sorted out 20 years ago, and I've stuck with it ever since. Like, the modern stuff, I'm not interested.
So, and there was the battle with jackets is some of the lighter jackets these days are pretty good, but they use foam padding to kind of augment it, and it doesn't cover everywhere. As well as that, there are lots of places where, as I say, it's just easier to put it in an undershirt. So if you want maneuverability and you want tournament level protection, which I do in both cases, because I do compete in quite a lot of tournaments, it is significantly better to have it as a layer just above your skin than a layer on top of your jacket. So that's something I'm looking into pursuing. But when I've got some things set up for safety tips in terms of testing levels, I'll have to do it after that, because I want to know actually which materials
you need to test it.
Yeah, exactly that.
Okay, so maybe in 5 years' time there'll be the Jamie MacIver fencing undershirt.
I think I'll be faster than 5 years. I hope so, at least.
All right, okay.
We'll see.
I was giving you a nice long lead time because you've got a ton of stuff to do.
I've got a ton of stuff to do, yes. As you can probably tell, I tend to be busy and I tend to stay busy. We haven't even covered the day-to-day of running clubs and tournaments and that kind of stuff. But they're all ticking along these days, and other people support on all those ones, not all me, which is good.
Okay, so somebody gives you £1 million to spend improving historical martial arts worldwide. I'm guessing you'd spend it on the research, safety research.
I would safety research. To be honest, we have a ticking time bomb.
Someone's going to get killed in the tournament pretty soon.
Well, and the problem is that you can decide whether to put this in the podcast or not. Most HEMA providers are not producing anything which is rated as protective equipment. Actually, Spez has this on their website, right? This is not protective equipment.
Right. They're protecting themselves against liability.
They're protecting stuff like that. How much it would do, I've got no idea. But at the end of the day, right, we are using things as protective equipment that are not, at least in Europe or the UK, officially labelled as protective equipment or being allowed to be sold as that, right?
And they don't have any of the sort of standard marks, like the British standard marks.
Exactly that, yep. Because there are certain thresholds you have to reach to do that, and no one has done things like risk assessments of how these look and like what is an appropriate level of force dissipation and all that kind of stuff. It's probable that many of the things that we've got are probably would be fine, right, if there was something that they could conform to. But if we do have that, that death in a tournament kind of nightmare scenario, and an insurance claim happens on the back of that, there's going to suddenly be a very, very focused lens on a lot of these things, and everybody worldwide is going to suddenly be in a situation of like, okay, we can't fence without protective equipment that's rated, but we haven't got any because there's very few things that are rated. There are a few, but they're few and far.
I mean, the fencing masks are rated, but they're rated for something else.
Rated for something else, right? And pretty much everything that has a rating has kind of done it for something else. You don't need this is the thing, you don't need an official standard to be officially rated, right? If there is one, you've got to follow it. But if there isn't one, there are ways of getting rated protective equipment without that. You just got to prove that you have assessed the risks appropriately. So it's quite a high barrier, right? Saying this is the standard, I followed it, is relatively easy by comparison to saying I've done all this research. This is what the risks are, and I've kind of followed it. So what I would be doing with £1 million that I think would benefit most of HEMA would be creating that open research. And I am quite keen on making it open. That we can then start making equipment manufacturers start to say, okay, right, I'll test it against these risks. I'll make sure that it is appropriate, rather than just be like, I think it's fine. It'll work, probably.
Yeah, it looks all right.
Maybe. It's good to me. I didn't get hurt when I used it, so it must be good, which is sadly what we're all kind of going around with.
Interesting. Yeah, and it's interesting that you're already like taking concrete steps towards what you would do with that £1 million. So if anyone listening has a spare £1 million, they might actually be more inclined to give it to you.
Yeah, hopefully. Yeah. We'll get less far with less than £1 million, but we can get pretty far with thousands rather than millions, or at least tens of thousands.
Sure. I mean, how much did your campaign raise in the end?
The Kickstarter was just over 4,000, and then what we received was just under 3.5.
So for just under £3,500, you managed to establish what you've established about tips for rapiers.
Exactly. And half of that
is a pitiful sum.
Yeah, exactly. Half of that was in setting up things that we can use again to do other experiments.
Wow.
Right. So repeating it with longsword isn't going to cost another £3,500. It's going to cost just really the time, a few materials, but peanuts.
Yeah.
And we could find it out with longsword with 1,000. We could test the longsword, a bunch of other stuff. There are some, like the ballistic gel, you can't reuse it. We've got to make that every time, and that's quite expensive, right? But even so, it's not a lot to run it again for something else and do the same experiments.
It is tricky raising money for stuff as a company rather than a charity.
Yes.
Just a thought that's just popped into my head, which treat it with all the disdain you like. But you could, for instance, have like stickers or something that is cheap and easy to have printed on demand and distributed, right? That people who want to support the work can pay, £50 for a sticker that says, I supported Historical Fencing to do longsword tips.
Yeah.
Right? And that way you're selling them a product so that the accounting is straightforward.
Yeah.
Right? And you don't have to explain why people are just giving a limited
money.
Liability company money.
Yeah. I do have a way of donating money to the research on the website already, historicalfencingresearch.com again.
Well done. That was better.
Yeah.
But you mumbled it a bit. Historicalfencingresearch.com.
Thank you, Guy. Historicalfencingresearch.com.
That's it.
So what I intend to do is get a way of making it more obvious how that's tracking through the experiment. So it is clearly funding for the experiment, not just gives Jamie money for beer, right? I did consider doing it as a charity. The reason I didn't do it as a charity is while it's easier for people to give you money, it's much harder for me to take any of the money. And as I say, my time for it, is something that I'm not, make a massive profit on this. But if I'm dedicating a weekend, or really, honestly,
Dude,
it was about.
I get paid to show up and teach seminars in places, and I really, really enjoy doing that. You do not have to justify using your time and expertise to benefit the community in some way and getting paid for it. It's fine.
There is that. But as a charity, you do have to justify that to the Charities Commission. And that's what I've shied away from in HFC, because that's a charity, quite a lot of taking any money for teaching for that reason. So, that's why I didn't go down the charity path, because there's a lot of hoops we'd have to jump through if I did.
Okay.
One set of hoops or another, basically. You've got to choose one of them.
Yeah. And I think, honestly, also the limited liability thing is probably sensible if you're going to be making safety
100%.
recommendations.
100%. Yeah, that was essential. Yeah.
Well, thank you so much for joining me today, Jamie. It has been lovely to meet you at last.
Thank you, Guy. Yeah, at last. Absolutely. It's been great. Thank you. Good chats and everything. And I'm glad we talked about Vadi as well. Definitely was happy to get that in.
Thanks for listening. You can find the episode show notes at swordschool.com/podcast, where you will find transcriptions, photos, videos, and links for this episode. You can find a direct link to the show notes for this episode in the description. Join us next week for another cracking conversation. See you then.